It's member-supported Hawaii Public Radio, and I'm Dave Lawrence. All things considered, having a very special pair of guests joining us this afternoon. These are some cats. I was fortunate. It was 17 years ago I first got to sit around and do this. It's Jack Casady, Jorma Kaukonen. It's Hot Tuna. It's also core members of Jefferson Airplane. It's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame members. And aloha, mahalo, welcome.
Thanks,
Nice
man.
to
Great
be here.
It's in unison. We can all kind of get our lines together. You know what? The reason I wanted to tape a little thing with you while you're in town, and I appreciate your time because I know you've probably recorded about 8,000 of these by now, and it gets hard to talk about some of these stories. So hopefully this one is original enough for a couple minutes. I had Jorma on, and the thing that blew me away, it invited questions that would go beyond music to any man, woman, child who was listening to the show. He said, you guys started playing together as friends, as partners, 1958.
Yep.
And it's kind of, I don't think there's a lot of folks, if they think about themselves and they're listening, they're like, was I doing anything with anyone back in 58? And I'm still with them. And I guess I heard a little from Jorm about why he feels that partnership can have longevity like that. But just when you hear a number like that, what does it make you think?
You know, I think it's only been fairly recently I realized how unique that is, you know, we've just taken it for granted, you know, like childhood friends do. But as we got older and older, and the friendship flourishes, it's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a girl, and she was asking about that, and I said, you know, I think we have memories and base points in our relationship that have nothing to do with the business of music. My mom used to fix some roast beef sandwiches, and I'd go over to his house, and his grandma at the time would be putting out a lunch or a spread or something, and we'd be running around as kids in the meantime, and at the same time starting to get interested in music that was something to do together. You know, I mean, rather than a traditional go out and play football or play sports or something like that, or steal cars or whatever. And so it was interesting when you look back on it, because that was the glue and the common bond that pulled the interest together was music, listening to music, and anything later on that had to do with it. Even though our paths went off in a bit different directions, as we had almost a 4-year spread in age, and I was finishing junior high and he was going off to college.
And then there's that, right, and that spread continues as you guys don't stay together from that point all the way through the 60s. You evolve, do your own thing, and then return together.
Well, you know, the Vietnam War was heating up in the early 60s, and, you know, I had to I worked in clubs for a long time, and then got myself back in college because you had to, or else you were automatically drafted. But in any case, we hooked up again in earnest in 1965 when he invited me out to California to join the just put together Jefferson Airplane. And I came out in October 1965.
That's amazing. You can still remember the month, the year. I mean, we're going way back.
Oh, I remember, because I'd drop out of school, except I had just gone back to Montgomery Junior College.
Was it on his invite that made you drop out?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's your fault, Jorma, and thank you very much.
You're welcome.
He said he just, you know, we kept in touch. We used to run up together. Actually, when he used to go to New York, I'd take a train up from D.C., we'd meet and go to hear all the folk singers in the early 60s, you know, Gertie's Folk City, and hear Reverend Gary Davis, and hear, oh God, just a whole host of folkies in the beginning. Then he moved out to California, and when we were talking on a phone conversation at a mutual friend's house one night, he asked what I was doing. I said, I'm doing the usual thing, you know, is to keep myself in school and playing guitar and playing bass. And he said, you're playing bass now? I said, yeah, I've been playing bass since I was 16. And he says, well, I just joined this band called Jefferson Airplane. It's a folk rock band. And I said, you, the purist, joined a folk rock band? You got to be kidding me. So he said, listen, I'm not really wild about the present bass player. Let let me talk to somebody and make a few calls. So he called back. He says, listen, we got this manager. This manager promises to pay us $50 a week whether we work or not. I said, you're on. So I dropped out of school, got a plane ticket, my first plane ride out to San Francisco, and joined the band in October.
It's like you said it, it's part of it. He talked about the personal binding points, I guess it would be. I see them as things that you connected on, the music, but also your friendship outside of performing on stage. I guess I think of the word you used, which really strikes me, and completely pulling away from the music industry, you call him your oldest friend. I mean, I almost get choked up when I say it, talking about, I mean, I do, because it's like, it's like the seasons in the field thing. We're talking about a lot of seasons have come by. And this is a survivor kind of thing. And are there key ingredients that you would, look at as some of, like Jack was saying, the binding points?
Well, I think, like I told you when we talked before, I think, well, first of all, we're still alive. That helps a lot. But just totally aside from getting a giggle about that, we're really different kinds of people. We don't agree about everything. But we've always respected each other as men, as an artist, and so it seems to have worked.
But so many other partners have come and gone, and there's still Jack.
Well, we're not entering from the opposite sides of the stage or anything like that. Like Sam and Dave. I think. I was talking to somebody else about this, and I said, we don't really step on each other's territory. And I think, in bands form, you see the classic band form, and over a period of time, because most of them form while they're still in the late teens or early 20s, they're still finding their way around their music and their identity and their ego and whatnot. And as people grow through a band format and gain popularity and status and all the stuff that goes with it, your own little acolytes, your own little sycophants that follow you around, and all that classic stuff that's in rock and roll bands. I think it's detrimental to the human element and friendship, and you start, going off in your own little camps and competing with each other. It's like I was telling somebody, I'm not interested in writing a set list. It's not my territory. It's not up to me to try to vie for certain areas that I know Jorma is really good at. And so it's not important for me to establish myself as doing that kind of job. He'll talk over the sets with me, and we'll move him around during the nights, But it's not something that I would sit off in a corner and say, "Gee, he gets to do the sets every night, man. I want to do the sets." And so I think you begin to realize what you're good at doing and where your position is, and there's no reason to try to usurp that.
Another thing too is just because the nature, people are always talking about Jefferson Airplane reunions and stuff like that, and the Airplane was an interesting band. We got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because of two songs that were actually songs, White Rabbit and Somebody to Love. To me, the magic of what happened with the band was more about us, in my opinion, as a live band than anything else. We had a lot of these great songs, they were very complex and stuff like that, but we didn't have a legion of hits where we had to, and I'm not critical of people. I'm going to mention the Eagles. I'm not critical of a band like the Eagles that has a string of hits. It's not bad to have a string of hits. You don't have to worry about sending your kid to college and stuff like that. But, with their scene, as I look at it from the distance of being an outsider, is they need to play those songs the way they were on the records. And pretty much from what I've heard the stuff, that's how they do it. And I guess that's okay. The Airplane, because of the way it evolved, the fact that Grace doesn't sing anymore, et cetera, could never really. We tried to reunion in '89. It didn't really work because we didn't have that kind of a catalog of stuff to relive. That's the bad news. The good news is that we don't have that kind of a catalog of stuff to relive. Sure, Jack and I are playing songs we've been playing for 50 years. They mutate constantly. Our audience, God bless them, does not require that it sounds the way it did in Live at the New Orleans House. Whether we change instruments, we learn different ways to play stuff, that we're allowed to evolve, even when playing old songs. And that's cool. From an art, not talking about a personal relationship, but just talking about as being an artist in a deal that has a lot of longevity, to have to go out and do the same set for whatever, the set that we did for when we recorded Bless His Pointed Little Head at the Fillmore or whatever like that, year after year, to me, what a drag that would be. You know, I mean, aside from the fact that I could never remember how to do stuff like that either. But we're allowed to evolve in ways, you know. And sure, people have, you know, when I go listen to an artist that I like, sure, you want to hear the soundtrack of your life, you want to hear whatever it is, you know. And I get that. That's
what you identify with.
Sure. And listen, that's powerful stuff. You know, that's one of the reasons that we're still around as a commercial entity. But even the people that like that, they want to, I want to hear Hesitation Blues, your new song in the morning for the morning, or whatever song they want to hear. They'll also allow us to play new stuff. That's magic.
And I guess I was thinking they'll allow you to also interpret it the way that you want at that point in your life.
Absolutely, and not. You're right, and that's a blessing. I mean, you just, you know.
I was asked this morning. You know, people ask me, well, you guys have been playing, you know, 50 some years together. It must be like road. You don't even have to think about it, and it's completely the opposite. You know, and
because of the challenging terrain you
because of the
establish.
challenging terrain, because we keep it challenging in the sense that night, tomorrow night when we play it, that's going to be the most important night and regardless of any other night, that's the moment right there. And what we give people in this, particularly in this acoustic format more than any other, is that entrance into our world of just sitting down across from each other, sharing the music and playing, but allowing the music to. I always tell people that it allowed the ghost to appear between us. There's Jorma, there's Jack, and then there's that entity that's Jorma and Jack. And that's what we all listen to when we play. When Jorma and I play, we listen to each other for that. And that's what makes it unique. We say, wow, that I've never heard it sound like that before. And that can guide you. If you listen to that, then that'll lead me to what my next note's going to be within a song. That'll lead me to figure out some bass part, some bass playing in there that will help create and further the atmosphere that we're entering into that night. And it's really mysterious stuff, but you've got to be right there on this. You got to be Johnny on the spot there. It's not casual at all. We're wired to the teeth when we go out there.
It's a lively musical conversation that seems to have, that's what you're describing to me, one that you have to pay attention to what's being said.
You were talking about my early years, when I was 14, 15, and actually 12, 13, 14, and listening to my dad's collection of jazz records. He was an audiophile and a jazz collector. The stuff that I really liked that Dad had was like stuff coming out of the late 20s and early 30s. There was small jazz combo stuff because of that mix of the instruments, because they played off of each other. And that stayed with me my whole life. The early jazz stuff like Jimmy Jufrey 3, where they didn't have, it was just this mysterious, deep, interesting sound that only 2 or 3 or 4 people could make, but make so much more rather than the big band stuff that came in. Later on, I began to appreciate what goes into a big band arrangement. But what really pulled me in early in music was that small combo stuff.
Less is more is often really a big deal. I've noticed as I get older, and I guess as I wrap this conversation up with you, you said something really interesting about that. Where you do the set list, and I think sometimes for folks when they look at the band, you're here acoustic, but you're not always acoustic. You still and I just want to throw it in there because when he talks about you doing the set list and being able to adapt the songs to where you are now. I was watching 1976 Portchester Capitol Theater.
Yeah.
And I mean Funky Number 7, and I wrote the words, "If I live tomorrow like I'm living today, there ain't no way to borrow. Look for me to stay." You had the fro, the tone you had. What a savage monster on that. But yet, I saw a video from last year. You're still playing that, and you're working it in and adapting it to where you're at now.
Well, here's another thing too. I have to unabashedly praise Jorma for lyrics, because the lyrics are what lead me to different notes. So I'm always searching for notes and good lyrics, and lyrics that don't pin you down to, say, your high school graduation or some political event or something like that.
Not that there's anything wrong with
that.
No,
not that there's anything wrong with that. But for me, lyrics that are a little more open to interpretation but personal, which is really what covers Jorma here. It's very personal. He's a very personal lyricist, but it's poetic, so that it leads me somewhere else, rather than the usual. I'm chasing it, to see if I can get it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and as a lyricist, the whole, I don't remember whether we discussed this or not, but I think about this. The writing lyrics is an interesting thing, because obviously when one writes lyrics, one has an idea about what they're trying to say. And as often as not, people have no idea what you're really trying to say. And that used to, in some way, well, they have no idea what I really meant. But what I've come to appreciate over the years, because I realize I'm exactly the same way, if you get something, because most of the stuff that I write is heavily couched in metaphors, not everything, but listen, if it triggers something, in your psyche, that's a good thing, And I've gotten to the point now, if you like my song, great. If we're having a discussion and we discuss, you thought that? That's interesting. I really meant it. But that really doesn't matter. That doesn't matter as long as somebody gets something out of it and they enjoy it, The other thing is, if you're talking about set lists, a set to me is dynamically like a song. And so when I put things together, I write things out so it flows in some ways, so it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But of course, live music is a death-defying act, and strange things happen. And so we change stuff all the time on the fly. But it's nice to have a point of departure. Otherwise, and this is not just a factor of being an aging musician, otherwise it's like all of a sudden you know all these songs and you just can't think of one that you want to play. So it helps to have notes. It doesn't hurt to have notes.
And I know from our conversation, structure is important to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it works better than others. Now, one of the things, like I talk to my students. One of the things, if we're teaching a class, and one of the students gets to play at the open mic at the Fur Peach Ranch or anywhere, if you're not doing it all the time, if you're playing once a week, once a month, whatever it is, all the marbles are on that night, and if it's not as good as you thought it was, it's like, oh man, how am I ever going to recover from this disaster? And But we get to do it every night, and sure, some nights are better than others, but we get to recover from the disaster more quickly.
I like that. Well, we're lucky. We're very fortunate. One, that you came back to the state again. You've been here so many times, and to do this special tour, some unusual events as part of it. But the second thing is, just as I say, thank you for doing this. I'm very fortunate. This room we've had. And some interesting folks. I remember Ben Vereen, Ziggy Marley. Yeah. Certain people stick out from talking to them in here. And it's a nice place. And I know your time is important. As you get older, you really realize my time means something. That 5 minutes matters.
Right.
So on behalf of anyone who enjoys this, and on behalf of myself and the radio station, very grateful that you would enter our Atherton Performing Arts Studio.
Our pleasure. Yeah. Your air conditioning is great, by the way.
You're liking that? I will speak to the management, see if they can extend you a copy. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you
man.
very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Bye-bye.